All right, we are live, and I got a terrible stain on my shirt, but look at that. That's the magic of doing it like this. Look at this. I'm disappearing a little bit behind the screen. Welcome, Juice Ads, to the first episode of Raw Pregame. This is what I've been waiting to do. Up, 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 up. Here I am. Nope. Good. Yeah, perfect. Welcome to episode 1 of Raw Pregame. This is the podcast I've been dying to do since I started this about 6 months ago. Actually, my first ever podcast, if you go back to, at the time, it was Rubbing the Rhubarb, episode 1. That was all about, hey, let me just try this out. Let me give some instant feedback from Friday Night SmackDown. And so, look, I'm going to be honest with you. WrestleMania is around the corner. I'm excited by default that it's WrestleMania, but I'm not really too high on the product lately. Neither WWE or AEW has been blowing me away with their content. But if I had to pick one right now, I'd probably pick AEW. Although I have friends that vouch that SmackDown's been on fire, Raw's been decent. You know, Orton and The Fiend, that's probably the best angle they got going right now on Monday Night Raw. I haven't seen too much of Lashley as champion, but with WrestleMania is coming right up, it'll be here before we know it. So I kind of scrambled to get this going for 7:30 for a half hour before Raw comes on. But let's check out this card. All right. So how many ways can we do this here? All right. Now let's see if I can zoom in. Can do some highlights here. Let's see. The only thing about using a Mac, I don't know how to zoom in on the web browser, but how about we do this? We go to view, we just go zoom in. There we go. Perfect. Now, we don't know what night the main events are. Now, I've heard from other podcasts out there that what they should do is have like a SmackDown night and a Raw night, which I agree with, because if you're going to do a brand split, do it right. I mean, when they very first did the brand split and they had each brand had their own tag team belts, and one had the US belt, right? One had the Intercontinental belt, one had the women's belt, one had Cruiserweight. And then you had one champ that floated between both shows. I think if you're going to have two separate brands, well, first of all, you don't need what are there, 12 belts right now at this point? I think you should take all the champs, maybe make US exclusive to wherever that's at right now. You make Intercontinental exclusive to wherever that is right now. I believe Intercontinental's on SmackDown and US is on Raw, unless I'm mistaken. But we don't need two world champions. WCW tried that in the early 90s, and I'm glad Ravishing Rick Rude was able to get his hands on one, but it really didn't work. It doesn't work. We all know it's one organization. You could have, what do you have now? 3 brands? All right. NXT might be doing a little bit better than what ECW did, or WWECW as it's called. But I mean, we don't need all these belts, and especially with the women's division. I mean, I was talking about this during the Royal Rumble with my good friend who doesn't even really watch wrestling anymore, except for when he comes here. All right. You had a lot of women in that Rumble match that were retired. You can't even call them part-timers because they're just making a Rumble appearance, or maybe they come on like a reunion show when they do that once or twice a year. And then you had a lot of NXT women on there as well. So the depth really of the roster isn't there for this brand split to begin with, in my opinion. But if you're going to do it, let's just start by making these belts a little less common and make them mean something. Because right now, in my opinion, they really don't mean much. Especially the belt, and the belt on Raw is the regular WWE, standard championship belt. And yeah. So, but let's see what's going on. Let's check it out. So on the night 1 card, let's zoom in a little bit more so the audience can see. I love how the Wikipedia page has to explain storylines, as if people don't know that there's fucking storylines. All right, so there we go. We'll have better production for you next time. But like I said, I had to scramble to get this on today. I thought I was going to have a guest or two, but that's okay. I still really wanted to do this show because I started out my whole podcast journey on I was looking for post WrestleMania 28 feedback. That was Rock Cena 1 down in Miami. And that's how I discovered podcasts to begin with, and especially wrestling podcasts. So real quick, before I even go any further, not that these guys are going to see it unless I show it to them or link them to it somehow, but shout out to DTKC, the Podfather, Don Tony, and his, former partner on Monday nights, Kevin Castle, who's still on the Patreon. So I highly recommend you join the Patreon. It's awesome. Then the Soup guys, Mish and Joey Numbers. All right. And then you can't talk about the family without talking about, if those are the brothers, you have the cousins, you have John Draper, and you have Trez. Trez, if you know the Patreon family. And obviously, Draper, if you listen to Soup or had the Soup Patreon. So shout out to all of them, and shout out to Solo Monster, and shout out to a guy I've been watching a lot lately, because I've been, since this pandemic, which has really been, for me, feeling kind of like more of a house arrest than anything else. I've really been leaning on YouTube a lot for my entertainment, especially as a cord cutter. And a guy I never knew, but just, I guess the algorithm led him to me on YouTube, Hannibal. I'm pretty sure we're around the same age. He actually made the journey into a career in professional wrestling, which was something I was really thinking about when I was 19, 20 years old, and jacked and tan, and just really wanted to do it and just never did it. So I guess he did at the same time. And if you don't know his story, he made it to the WWE. I guess he was with FCW. And then he had a situation where he kind of got screwed over, and he's been doing his own indie thing. And I actually think he's doing better with this YouTube channel than he's done with this wrestling career. So one thing leads to another. And I don't even think he's fully done with this wrestling career, as far as I know, because he was cutting some mean promos against Cody Rhodes for like a real, Cody Rhodes had some angle within the last year or so about some sort of open challenge to anybody, and Hannibal answered it on his YouTube channel and in character, and he's pretty fucking goddamn good. I mean, this guy knows his character. He knows, or if you want to call it a gimmick, he knows his gimmick, and he's pretty goddamn good. So there's been way less talented people. There's been way less talented people in the big leagues. We'll put it that way. But I want to give all those guys a shout out in case they ever fucking stumble across this. And again, I mean, I talked to DT, I talked to KC, Draper, Soup guys. I mean, they all would recognize my name. I think Solo Monster may or may not, because I threw him a couple donations back in the day, but he probably would still recognize my name on Twitter or whatever. And even Trez, I mean, she's cool. She answers me on Twitter. The only person I really never interacted with is Hannibal, and he's really not part of that extended DTKC Soup family, Solo Monster thing. So, but yeah. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out, not that he needs one by any stretch of the imagination, but to Conrad. I've been listening to him since he used to do a show with Ric Flair, and it was very creative. They actually did bits on it. Like they actually did like comedic, like little bits, like 30-second, 60-second bits on it. It wasn't just tell me a story about this day or this event, but Conrad really found a niche. And I think he's up to 5 shows now or 6 shows. He's got a show for like every day of the week now. So shout out to Conrad and all the content he's given us. And yeah, I'm just, I have a lot of different shows. I do a lot of different podcasts. I've been only doing this for 6 months, so I'm still very much a rookie, but I'd be remiss to not at least shout those guys out first. And anyway, here we go. So night number 1, and I'm assuming this is what Wikipedia is considering, or whoever wrote this on Wikipedia. I guess whatever's on top is being considered to be the main event for that night. And whatever's number 2 is probably going to be considered the semi. So it looks like we have Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair for the SmackDown Women's Championship. And again, I just told you my opinion on the SmackDown Women's Championship. It shouldn't exist. There should just be a WWE Women's Championship. Come one, come all. They don't have that many women to begin with. Never mind that many women. And I'm not saying this in like a derogatory way, but you have so many. How many guys are on the roster, right? And how many of those guys are would you say are main event guys? All right. Now compare that to the amount of women they have on the roster. How many women in the women's division would you say are main event women? You know, that's a legitimate question. So why do you need 2 main event belts if you only have a group that really suits one main event status? If that makes any sense. I don't know. And I'm not saying neither of these women deserve to be a world champion. I would put them both in that main event category. And I think on the Raw side, if I'm not mistaken, it's Asuka and Rhea Ripley. And obviously Asuka's a no-brainer for main event division, right? Rhea Ripley's a little young, but she's good young. She's like the way Brock Lesnar came in and was immediately a main eventer. She's sort of in that same category in the women's division. And, I think she's 24, 25. So that's rare, but she looks like an ass kicker. I mean, dude, I wouldn't want to fuck with her. And that's a big problem too with a lot of the guys we see on TV, right? When I was a kid in the 90s and watched wrestling late, I didn't start watching until 92, but I would see it when I flipped through the channels. And part of the reason I'd flip through the channel because I was scared. I'd see like Hogan cutting a promo or whoever, Savage cutting a promo before I was a fan. And I would immediately get the fuck away from that channel as quickly as I could because I thought those guys are going to jump through the TV and fucking rip my head off. And, now as an adult, you at least want these people to look like if you saw them in real life, you don't want them to fuck with you or you wouldn't fuck with them. Like if you saw them out at a bar and they caused the problem, you're like, hey, no worries. I'm just going to go about my life. Sorry, sir. And unfortunately now, and I sort of wish I knew this when I was 19, 20 and deciding not to go train to be a pro wrestler because I'm 5'8", and, if I'm in shape, I'm a lean buck 85 with like a decent sized bicep. If I'm not in shape, I'm probably like a deuce and a quarter with a beer gut. You know what I mean? But I mean, the size of some of the guys now is astonishing that they got away with it. But hey, no hate, good for them. Good for them. I'm just a lifelong fan. But I don't even know if I'm going to give predictions. We're just going to kind of run through the card. Tonight, I believe, would be the go-home show for Raw, if I'm not mistaken. So, let's see. When is WrestleMania? That's how little I've been watching it. So this podcast is going to kind of force me to get back into this as well. So, it looks like the actual date for WrestleMania 37 is going to be April 10th through 11th. Okay, so this isn't the go-home show yet. Next week is go-home. But that's okay. We could still talk about it. The card, I would imagine the card is mostly solidified. I wouldn't expect any matches to be added after this week. But, again, you just never know. So, I just haven't been watching SmackDown long enough to really on a consistent basis. I saw little interaction last week between them. But, I'll make predictions before WrestleMania. But I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on the card as we have 15 minutes left till Raw comes on. We are 15 minutes away. So as soon as the clock strikes 7:49. I'm sorry, 7:59. We're out of here. We're done. Go flip on USA. And the reason I picked this time slot, by the way, is because I don't believe anybody else really does a Raw pregame show. So maybe this will catch on. Maybe it won't. Who gives a shit? Something new for the Juice Giorgio network. And, you know, I don't know a lot, but I know wrestling. All right. So anyway, you know, as it pertains to Sasha and Bianca and their match, I think they're going to put on a good match. At the very least, I think we're going to get something entertaining. Lashley versus Drew. So this is interesting to me because when they pulled the title off of Drew, and that was a big surprise that when the Miz got it back, I thought they were going to let the Miz actually carry it into Mania. But I was even more surprised that they let Lashley have a shot with it. Again, this really isn't a prediction show, but just looking at this, I don't know. I mean, they let Drew carry the company for almost a whole year. He had his big WrestleMania moment at the end of the WrestleMania last year, and he got screwed because it was the beginning of COVID. They had to do it in the Performance Center or basically not do it at all. So I think this year, maybe because Drew was a good sport. Was he the best champ ever? Was he the most entertaining champ ever? No, but I think he gave it 110%. I think just overall with him and his character, I just think there's something missing, and I don't even think it's his fault. I cringe a lot at his promos, but again, I don't think it's his fault. I think, and I'm going to talk about this a lot. I just think there's way too many fucking writers. I think these guys are way too micromanaged. I think if you just let Drew be Drew, which I sort of feel like they do a little bit, but if they let him be Drew 100%, which I don't think they do, I think he'd have a little bit more charisma to him. I think he'd have a little bit more of that it factor that the top guys have. I don't think he'd ever be like Austin Rock Cena level, but I think he'd be, you know, maybe upper tiered if they let him just kind of, what do they all say? What do the most successful guys say? They say, I just became an extension of my own natural personality and I just ran with it. And I do see that in Drew, but I also see the micromanagement. I see the staff of, what do they have, 80 writers, 100 writers? It's ridiculous. And these writers, for the most part, aren't even wrestling fans. They're just TV people that do soap operas, or it's like their first job out of fucking college or whatever it might be. But a lot of these writers, and by the way, speaking of wrestling podcasts, shout out to Court Bauer, who was a writer, but he was also a fan. And I think, to the best of my knowledge, still has his own promotion. I'm not even going to try to think of the name. I just can't. I was going to say Game Changer Wrestling, but that's a whole different fucking bag of nuts right there. But anyway, I'm going to give you a prediction. I say Drew all the way for this matchup, because I think that's going to be. I think they got the belt off Drew to give it to Miz to get it on a heel. So they're giving Lashley a nice little run right now. Or, you know, he's going to end up being a transitional champion, but at least they're sort of solidifying his career. He could put it on his resume that he was the champ. But I see, Vince, from what I've heard, I don't know him personally, never met him, but from what I heard, Vince really admires loyalty. And I think Drew, aside from like the mid 90s, the cartoon era, and then the pre-Attitude era when they were really struggling, when supposedly they were taking water coolers out of Titan Tower, 2020 was probably the most difficult year in the history of the WWE in terms of having to run the business. So I see them paying Drew back with the loyalty of him giving it 110% the whole fucking time through. So I will make at least that one prediction tonight. I say Drew McIntyre all day, every day will have his moment. And actually, I believe he closed out Mania last year beating Brock. They should let him do it this year in the real stadium with the real crowd. So I hope Wikipedia is wrong about this match order, because I think if anybody, and this is only night one, but if anybody deserves to close out one of the nights, it's Drew. Let Drew get his moment. He had his moment last year, but he didn't. So, and I'm really interested to see this year how they set up the stadium. Are we going to get a hybrid of Thunderdome and real people? Because that might be interesting. That might be kind of cool. But then the problem is, they like to control the Thunderdome fans, right? They give them cues and, I don't want to say instructions, but they sort of tell them, when to applause and when to boo. From what I hear, it's, I don't know if it's that cut and dry, but I do hear there are some rules and regulations that they'd like you to follow for being part of it, which is cool with me. I mean, whatever. I just, not for me to have my face on there. I'll do this instead and get, hopefully one viewer eventually. Speaking of The Miz, so that's the next match on the docket here. Bad Bunny, who, I'm going to be honest, I really haven't been a huge music fan the last 4 or 5 years or so. And it has a lot to do with Apple iTunes just totally shitting the fucking bed on me. I was updating my iPod constantly. And I was constantly using Shazam when I heard a new good song. I'd acquire the song, make a playlist, and Apple Podcasts or Apple iTunes has just even on an Apple computer, it just doesn't want you to manually update your own content anymore. It wants that $9.99 a month subscription based music fee, just like Spotify or whatever the other ones are out there. And that's wrong. You should have some freedom over your own fucking electronic devices, in my opinion. But who the fuck am I? I'm just the customer. I'm just the consumer. But anyway, no, Bad Bunny's been doing a really, really good job. I mean, considering he's had little to no training. I mean, he's probably had some minimal training, but he's got the charisma part down. He's got the mic part down, obviously. And definitely Miz can carry this match. It's just a singles match. I see probably Bad Bunny going over, especially with Damian Priest. I hope it's not a distraction roll-up. But Miz is a good sport. And he'll probably carry the match and some fuckery will happen. That's what I see anyway. But again, I think it'll be fun to watch. And because you have Morrison, and you know what a shame. This should be, I don't know why this isn't a tag match. Because you got Damian Priest and John Morrison, who, I mean, you can make an argument. I mean, neither of those guys are, what's the word I'm looking for? Rolling dervishes? Whatever the fuck word it is. They're not spring chicken. There you go. They're not spring chicken anymore. But they arguably both of those guys are in the best physical condition of their whole careers, right? So my only question is, and maybe it's because I'm not watching Raw enough, maybe one of the guys is injured or something, but why would this not be a tag team match? So, anywho, what do we got next here on the docket? The New Day. That's Kofi and Xavier versus the phenomenal AJ Styles. And is it Omos or Amos or Amos? I think it's Amos. I'm going to go with Amos. Okay, Raw Tag Team Championship. Again, I mean, this is going to be probably another really fun match to watch. Just because you have the New Day, you got two smaller guys. AJ's not a fucking huge guy himself, but he makes up for it, obviously. He's one of the best natural athletes in the game today. I mean, I'm sure we all wish we could have got that AJ HBK match. I don't think we ever got that, right? We missed it. AJ, I mean, it's partially WWE's fault, right? Because AJ was on that WCW roster when Vince acquired WCW, and I guess they cut him. And he made a name for himself, obviously, in TNA. And, good for him. But, good for the run he's had. He's one of the guys, I'm going to be honest, like, who knows if anybody on the roster is ever going to fucking see this or hear this. But I feel like I wouldn't even want to be friends with most of the roster right now. They just seem like not cool people to want to, like, hang out with or be around. But, like, AJ seems cool. Kofi seems cool. Xavier seems cool. Amos seems cool at his character. So he's probably cool in real life. And so I like that you have AJ and Kofi that can do all these fucking crazy moves, as well as Xavier. But I would say out of the two teams, if you had to pick one each, I'd say, Kofi and AJ. And again, Kofi and Xavier are, probably considered smaller guys, right? So to see Amos mix it up with either one and or both of them, they'll probably do a lot of double team moves on him with AJ like knocked on the floor or something outside. But that's what makes wrestling interesting, right? Like some of the most entertaining matches I've seen were like Rey Mysterio versus Big Show. Cause like this is the point of fucking watching wrestling. All right. Like, yeah, you don't have to tell us it's fucking fake or predetermined or whatever. Like, we get it. All right. We still want to watch the goddamn fucking match and see how it plays out. And we want to see the story that they're telling us in that 20 by 20. Unless you're at a house show or at a high school gym, then it might be what? 18 by 18, 16 by 16. I don't know. Or 17 by 17. Do they do 15 by 15? One day we might have a live chat in here that can answer these questions. Because I remember when my family used to take me to house shows back in like the early to mid 90s. Before in New Jersey, we weren't always allowed to have televised events. I was actually just explaining to one of my close friends who knows nothing about wrestling, because most people don't, how SummerSlam 97 was such a big deal for us here in Jersey, because they had taxed the shit out of having televised events here in this state. We had WrestleMania 4 and 5, and then I don't know what happened from 1989 to 97 with taxing televised events. Actually, I think that's when Vince McMahon in writing had to put to the Athletic State Commission, hey, this is entertainment. This isn't really a sport. And I think that was his loophole to catch the tax break, to make it affordable, or at least worth his while. I'm sure he could have afforded it, but why would you do something as a business owner if it's not worth your while? Love him or hate him. You got to do what makes the most sense. And on that note, it is 7:59. And just as I thought, we only got 4 matches down the card, which is great. We have more to look forward to. I don't plan on doing this again until next week, pre-Raw. Hence the name of the show, Raw Pregame. But thanks, Juiceheads, for joining me out there. If you decided to, enjoy Raw tonight. And I'll catch you next week on Raw Pregame. Peace.